Hey, what's up, guys? Glad to see a lot of you are enjoying this series. So, welcome back to Scenario Based Hacking Part 3. In this video, we will look at how to break into a machine where the operating system is fully patched. However, there is no AV or firewall, but the victim is behind a NAT device. So, how would we tackle this case? Well, even though the OS is patched, but the software on the machine might not be patched. What we mean by this is like softwares like Word, PDF might still be vulnerable to different attacks. In this demo, we will target PDF on the victim system. So what are we going to do? We are going to take a PDF file from the internet somewhere and then embed our payload into that PDF. Then we send that PDF file to the victim who would end up opening the PDF file, and once he opens it, well, game over. So is this really a real life vulnerability which exists, which is being used? Well, most definitely. From what I know, the hacking which happened in Google China seemed to use one of the PDF exploits as the starting point. So what is going to be the setup for SPH3? This is exactly the same setup as SBH2, where we have the attacker machine running backtrack and the victim machine running Windows XP behind the NAT device. So how would this work? Well, we'll create a malicious PDF and embed our payload into it. We'll have the victim download and run it, view the PDF file that is. If the victim contains the vulnerable version of PDF, then this attack would work. Else we'll look at other avenues. So we already have our backtrack instance up and running, and I have connected to it using PuTTY. We also have the first Windows XP machine, which has Adobe Reader version 8 installed, and the second Windows XP machine, which basically has Adobe Reader 9 installed. Now both of these machines are basically behind the NAT device. Okay, so let's now start with the actual exploitation process. Let's search for PDF modules within Metasploit. So it's listing a couple of auxiliary modules, but what we are interested in is the file format one, right? Most of which is these. Now there are a lot of PDF based vulnerabilities such as the collab collect info one, as well as the collab get icon one, which are very popular. However, once these are patched, typically it would not be possible to exploit them. So we'll try and use some sort of a generic way to exploit PDF, and that could be actually by creating a malicious PDF from scratch, which specifically does not utilize any software vulnerability in PDF per se, but leverages the PDF platform to execute our malicious code. So we will actually use the Adobe underscore PDF underscore embedded underscore exe module for this purpose. Let's look at the different options. So one of the first things we require here is basically to give an input file name, right? So if you look at the current directory, I have already downloaded my resume and kept it here. This is a valid PDF file. So let's go ahead and set in file to be /root/vivek-resume.pdf, and I guess everything else can remain as is. What we will actually do is the output file, let's still keep it as eagle.pdf. The payload, let's set it be a reverse TCP metapreter one. This would of course require some options to be set, which is typically the L host or the attacker machine IP address, which is 1.2, right? Now let's hit exploit, and this should create our malicious PDF file. Perfect. So the generated output file is here. What we'll actually do is we take this file and copy it to a web directory on the hacker machine. Right? Now let's go to the victim machines. So actually go to the first victim machine, which is running Adobe Reader version 8. And before that, let's actually set up a payload handler. Let's go ahead and set up a payload, and this, as we know, is going to be the metapreter reverse TCP. Set up the L host, which is the hacker machine IP address, and let's hit exploit. So now our reverse payload handler is waiting silently. Now let's go to our vulnerable machine, and let's say we now download this PDF file from the internet. We know it's evil.pdf. Let's save this onto the desktop, and now let's go ahead and view this file. So basically this says simply specify a file to extract to. So looks like we need to extract this somewhere. Most users would not understand much of what this means. They'll just probably save some place and extract it. It gives us another warning, which is basically to view the encrypted content, please tick do not show this message again box, blah blah blah. And I think most people would typically just click through these warnings because ideally they want to view this beautiful resume behind, which is mine. And so we just hit open. Once that happens, you momentarily might have noticed a command.exe. And in the background, you already noticed that a metapreter session has been opened with the victim, right? So this is a typical way by which a hacker can actually break into a remote system just using PDF. We could have also used a pure PDF exploit, but what I've seen is that is more difficult to get across through because the version of PDF etc. would have to match perfectly. So here we are. We do a get UID. We have the username on the system, get PID, do a PS and an LS, whatever you want, right? So in short, now we own the remote system. Now what we do with metapreter, what else can be done, etc. I think I've already talked about that enough in the Metasploit Mega Primer video series. Post exploitation itself, I think, is somewhere around a 60-minute video. So have a look at that. And I think what we've demoed right now is how to break into a client machine, which may have been fully patched from an OS perspective, but not from a program file perspective. Now, there is something interesting here which I would like you to note. So if we take another example, let's start our exploit handler again and go to this machine where we have Adobe Reader 9 installed, which is the latest version, and I've updated it. Let me just download the same file, save it onto desktop, and let's run this file. Or view this document, sorry. So this once again prompts me to extract the document. I do so, but now if you notice, it actually shows me this pop-up. The file is said to be launched by this PDF file. This is currently disallowed by your system administrator. And if you notice, the payload is not being executed. So the point here which I'd like to make is when you exploit software-based vulnerabilities or misconfigurations, as in this case, these can be very easily patched by the software vendor, or he can even put additional security controls to mitigate these problems, as in this case. Right? So if we click OK, well, sadly, nothing happens. So I guess this brings us to the end of scenario-based hacking, part 3. What we did here is for a machine which has the operating system patched, but the software aren't, does not have an AV, is behind the NAT, how to break into that using client-side vulnerabilities in client-side software like PDF. So as we saw that if we do not have the vulnerable version of PDF, then some of the attacks might not work. So how do we overcome this? Well, by using generic executables. So this is what we'll take up in the next video. This will be scenario-based hacking part 4. Please leave your comments behind and let me know if there are any other scenarios you would want me to have a look at. A lot of you have already given me tons of great scenarios. Be rest assured I have added all of them to my list and I will get to them eventually. That's all for this video. Signing off. Bye-bye.